We're going to be looking at more with story problems. So one of the things I think is as soon as I say the word story problems, my students just dread hearing that. It's important to understand that story problems have more of a process than just underlining the important information and then reading the problem carefully and coming up with an equation. Right? Most of the time, our story problems are going to fit in some different categories. So I want to do a quick review of some of the basic categories we have. Now, this isn't all of the options, but just some of the options I'm going to look at. So first of all, one of the types of problems that we can have with story problems is where we can establish a pattern. And this is a situation where something is being repeated each time. So maybe I decide I'm going to do a job, and when I do it, I get paid so much money for it. All right, so Mrs. McKinney decides she's going to work a job, and I am told that I will get paid X amount of dollars for it. Right, but then I have another person who's going to do the same job. Maybe Mrs. Rokop is going to do the same job. But I know that Mrs. Rokop is going to get paid $10 more than me. For whatever reason, I know that. Right? So I know that Mrs. Rokop is going to get paid $10 more than me. Okay, and maybe Mrs. Heineman is going to do the same job, but she is going to get an additional $10 on top of that. Right? The pattern is that each time the next person is getting paid an additional $10. Right? So my salary plus 10 is going to be Mrs. Rokop, but $10 even more than that is going to be X plus 20. Right? So my pattern would be X plus 10, X plus 20, X plus 30. Okay, depending on whatever situation that is. I could do a situation where I get paid X amount of money, but Mrs. Rokop is going to make $5 less than me, so she would be X minus 5, and the next person would make $5 less than that, X minus 10. Right? If we can ever establish a pattern, right, then we always want to represent whatever our missing info is following the pattern given like this. Our second option is that maybe we are given something with a total. Okay, whenever we know something is representing a total, we know that we want to add some stuff up and we want to set it equal to the total. Okay, so maybe I know that I spent $158 shopping for clothes. It was $15 per shirt, but I also had to pay, this is going to be ridiculous, but $20 to take the bus to get there, right? My total of $158 would go in the total position. Okay, my 15 and my 20 are what's being added up. Okay, then our next rule with story problems is that anything that's happening per an item would get a variable, right? So because $15 is happening once per shirt I'm buying, right, I would give that a variable. Okay, so a total story problem, you're always adding stuff up and you're setting it equal to a total. The last situation that we can talk about is a comparison story problem. And this is when we have choices in what options we want to look at. Okay, so do I want to go with AT&T or do I want to go with Verizon? Do I want to go to gym A or gym B? And whenever we're looking at a comparison story problem, we always want to set whatever our first option is equal to whatever our second option is. Now, in these situations, it's important to know that none of these stand alone. We might have to combine more than one option. We might be able to establish a pattern, but then want the total that Mrs. McKinney, Mrs. Rokop, and Mrs. Heineman all made together, and so we would be adding up those values to set it equal to the total. Okay, we might have a comparison of Sprint versus Verizon, but we might need to find a total that Sprint makes in and of itself. So see if you can use these separate categories as reminders to solve the next task.